So it's September 21st, Monday. We're talking about World War I and the development of trench warfare from the automatic response of the military on all sides, and then the rush to stalemate, which they didn't expect to happen. So, as you know from past discussions, all the militaries are sort of in a hurry to get an edge. And why are the Germans in such a hurry? Why is Moltke telling the Kaiser that he can't turn the trains around? What's the plan?
The Schlieffen plan?
The Schlieffen plan, yes.
Avoid a war on two fronts.
Right? They're trying to avoid a war on two fronts. So you load the trains, all the German troops, you sweep through Belgium, and you take Paris.
Was it this one where we went in taxis?
Yes. Yes. The French will come out in taxis to respond to this German invasion.
Did they pay taxi fare?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. It's 70,000 francs.
What, the soldiers, John, paid?
No, the government.
The government paid the taxi drivers. 70,000 francs. That is so cool. That's a piece of information I did not know, but that is, yeah, I should add that into my PowerPoint, right? That's pretty cool. 70,000 francs. Hey, pay up. Where's my tip? So, prior to the taxis getting out of the city, why are the Germans slowed up here through Belgium?
Because the Belgians put resistance, they didn't expect it.
And retaliate.
Right. So the Germans didn't expect Belgian resistance. They did resist, and then the Germans retaliated. They committed atrocities against the Belgian citizens. They executed people. Of course, these stories were spun out of control as well. I mean, they had it to the point where they were, skewering. I mean, literally, the stories came out that they were skewering Belgian babies on their bayonets and roasting them over fires to eat them. That's how far the stories got on the rape of Belgium. No doubt, they killed innocent civilians in firing squads. Roasting babies, probably a little too far. Rapes probably did occur. So, yeah. The German army gets slowed down, and that slowing is enough to allow the taxi cabs to get the French army out of Paris, enough of them, plus trains, to the front, and that begins the Battle of the Marne. And then we get this race to the sea. What was the race to the sea? The race to the sea. You wrote that down in your notes, right?
Yeah.
John.
It was when Germany would go on the offensive and France would counteract. And they create a line right across before Paris. And it was just a long stalemate because of it. Because no one could move past it.
Correct. So this blacked out line is 400 miles long from the North Sea, that's the race to the sea. Every time the Germans try to get around the French defenses, the French counter, and the Germans counter, the French counter, and so there's a 400-mile long line of troops strung out from the sea to the Alps, and this was never the plan.
So they just kind of kept pushing each other back.
They kept pushing each other out. They kept pushing each other out. There was never an intent to have a 400-mile long battle line. That's just insane. Why would you do that? Why would you spread all your men out in all these places when you're trying to just it's a sweep, but not from the ocean. It's just a sweep to, here's Paris, right? Trying to get to that point, but you're prevented from getting there. And so this unnatural, unplanned battle line spreads out because the French have enough men to prevent the Germans from getting through. And what's the weapon that allows the French to defend against massive numbers of troops? German troops. The machine gun, exactly. So the machine guns come out and the troops dig in. And this becomes known as trench warfare.
You said that both countries had outlawed the use of the machine gun but brought them just in case.
Law, not law. They had a gentleman's agreement that the machine guns would never be used against European armies. That they were for the imperial the places they'd imperialized, Africa and Asia, where they would be outnumbered by massive numbers of tribesmen against small units. And so that machine gun would sort of equalize the playing field and give them an advantage to win against large numbers. Because, let's face it, if you are a small British unit in Africa, your chances of survival against an armed, angry tribe are pretty low. So if you take the machine gun with you, that's your chance. But they thought, what a horrible weapon. I mean, it's mechanical killing. It's not like the old days where, mano a mano, swords, right? We'll battle each other with swords and the best man wins. And you kill that guy and then you go to the next guy in these massive battles. You've all seen Braveheart, right?
Never even seen no movie.
You've never seen Braveheart?
Let's watch it.
Do the accent. Do the accent.
Do the accent. The Scottish accent. Right. Well, Braveheart, it means that the Scots are going to fight the English and they're going to wipe their butts with them. They're going to lift their kilts. I'm putting this on video. So the Scots are going to go mano a mano, they're going to go man to man. And they're going to have their swords. They're going to fight them to the death. And if you get hit with an arrow, well, you just keep on fighting.
And why
Right?
will they fight to the death, Mr. Buck?
Why would they fight to the death? For freedom!
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for cueing me on that. Well, this is unlike that, right? This is mechanical killing, and it's sort of uncivilized, isn't it, in a way, when you think about this? Machines killing men?
There's no honor in it.
There's no honor. Thank you, John. There's no honor in this. But, nonetheless, they have the cult of the offensive. That was a phrase I brought up last week as well, the cult of the offensive. Where the way you win a battle is you have your superior manpower, superior training, superior equipment, and bravery. And you send those troops into battle, and you amass a large offensive force that breaks through any defensive perimeters that the enemy can put up. And both sides have this idea of the cult of the offensive. If we just go on the offensive enough times, with enough people, we can win. And it's really a flawed, outdated, outmoded way of thinking. Because you put men into this. You put men into the trenches. And we explained last week why, by the way, are they not just a long line of trenches? Why is it zigzag like this?
Is
Jacob.
it so that if the enemy gets in there, it's not just a straight shot? There's like corners and stuff that have to...
Right, so if the enemy gets into your trench, they'll just shoot down the line and kill everybody. And so it causes confusion amongst the enemy and a limited line of fire.
What's collateral?
Avoids collateral damage, thank you. Plus, if a shell, say a shell lands in the trenches, the explosion will only go from here to here. It won't take out long distances of people. Okay. So I didn't mention that last week, because there's going to be a lot of shelling. Millions and millions of rounds of shells falling in and around the trenches. And that actually leads to a mental state called what?
Shell shock.
Shell shock. Yeah. It's a phrase that's developed in World War I to describe the mental checking out of soldiers. What do we call it today? PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so it actually takes a couple of wars for the idea to actually be accepted. There's a famous story during World War... Did we pause? The famous story during World War II where General Patton comes into a mobile hospital in North Africa, and there's a man there. He can't see what the physical problem is. There's no bandages on this guy. He's not blood. There's no blood anywhere. So what's wrong with you? And he's just kind of like staring off into space, and he's mumbling. And they say, "Oh, sir, sorry." He's got shell shock, and was like, there's no such thing. And he slaps. I don't want any. And you saw it in the film last week with the French general doing the same thing. I don't want any, babies in my outfit. Get him out of here. The generals didn't believe in this whole idea of shell shock. But also, if you think about it, the generals are not the ones underneath the shells that are falling all the time.
They still scar themselves.
Yeah. In fact, being in combat is a way of testing your physical mental abilities. And we saw in the video last week, the film, the French general had a scar on his face. And I explained that on both sides, French, German, not so much the British, they're less crazy like that. They would, when they were young officers, they would fence with each other without the headgear to protect their faces. And frequently, and it was the intention, hopefully, they would be scarred on the face, maybe just a nick. So you have this scar on your face that shows you are man enough to go mano a mano again with the sword, just in practice, but you were willing to risk disfiguring yourself to show how tough you were. And sometimes they would lose an eye. And so it was very common to see generals with a scar on their face or an eye patch to show that how brave they were to their men, as an example. I'm not afraid. Why are you afraid? So to find somebody in the trenches who was, in their view, a blabbering idiot, there was a disgrace. So get out of here. We don't want you here. As opposed to the idea of, oh my God, you've been mentally wounded, okay? Because that's what we understand today. Soldiers are wounded on the battlefield in more than just physical ways. They're also wounded in mental ways as well. In fact, it's probably one of the #1 reasons for vets being homeless on the streets. We got issues that they could not get a job, they could not hold a job, just didn't recognize what the issues were. And so they've tried to make a lot more efforts in fixing those things. It's a whole other story, but it's one of the tragedies of war, right? Not just the physical death and the wounds, but the mental as well. What is this?
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire. Barbed wire was put up all around in front of the trenches to prevent the enemy from getting in. What are these dotted lines here?
Machine gun fire.
Machine gun fire. So here's a machine gun position, and this is their field of fire. It's a V. We shoot from this direction across to this direction and back and forth. We just mow whatever's in front of us. And what do we call it when those they go across each other? The machine guns pass over each other. Not crossfire. Crossfire is when you're caught between two sides and they're shooting at each other from both directions. This would be crossfire. This is called interlocking fields of fire. It's a defensive idea that allows you to, if one machine gets taken out, another one will cover the position. Because machine gunners are valuable targets. They're always trying to kill the machine gunners. I mean, wouldn't you? If you saw that flashing muzzle coming your way, and going over your head, that's the target. And so in war, machine gunners have the lowest life expectancy. You think, cool, I've got the machine gun. No, you're the target. We're going to kill you first. So machine gunners had a low life expectancy, even though they had the coolest weapon. This demonstrates that further into the war, the trenches became very complex. And, oh, by the way, are they just one line of trenches? No. This aerial photograph taken by airplanes shows that this line of trenches has several lines going back to further lines of trenches. Why do you need further lines of trenches behind you?
You can rotate.
You can rotate the man in and out. Good. What else?
You get if the enemy approaches your lines and actually takes over your trench, you fall back and then you fight them as they come through.
Exactly. You have a fallback position in case they do get through. Okay. What's this called in between the trenches? Here's
No man's land.
No man's land. No man's land is where the bodies are left. Hopefully they can get them out, but not always. Sometimes they're left there to be destroyed further by...
I heard they would have like ceasefires between like really intense battles to go clear out the dead people.
Ceasefires make sense, don't they? Because you don't want millions of men, or thousands, let's say, thousands of men just rotting out here. It's going to be miserable for both sides. So that would make sense to have a ceasefire to go get the bodies. But some bodies would not be retrievable. right? Because they'd be torn up by artillery. And so it's just body parts. And this breeds disease, it breeds rat infestations and birds that come and pick the flesh. So there's actually photographs, I don't have one in here, there's actually some photographs of shell craters where you see a part of a body sticking out, and it's a uniformed skeleton that's been picked over by birds and rats. This is a skull with a helmet on it. It's just pretty, in a uniform or the bones sticking out of a sleeve. They've just been left there to rot. Let's see. Remember this picture. I'm going to come back to this idea of these trenches being so complex when we talk about some of the ways they try to get men out. I showed this picture. These guys are going out to lay barbed wire. They're going to wait for nightfall, and they'll go out there and they'll twist these giant corkscrews into the ground and string wires through. Why corkscrews? Why not just pound them in?
Because it's quiet.
You need quiet. You got to do this quietly so you don't get shot at.
It's effective.
Um, This is a night barrage of shells going off. They make their own light for the photographer. This is a pretty intense photograph showing high altitude flares to light up the battlefield, either to, well, you attack across this at night, hoping that the night will hide you, but it doesn't, right? There's always a counter, and one of the points I want to make today, I'm talking about weapons of war in World War I and the practice of war, how they did it, is every time they build a weapon, there's always a counter. So the counter to the machine gun is the trench. And so to counter the trenches, you have to have other kinds of weapons. So high altitude flares will prevent night attacks. Artillery. These are these 500-pound shells here. They're huge. They make giant craters. They'll fire millions of these things. They will fire on enemy positions in the trenches. They'll stop firing for an attack. Okay? When they do attack, it's called going over the top. Oh, by the way, some of these are still out there unexploded. There are places where the ground is too dangerous. They will not, won't do anything with it. It's sort of it's still a no man's land.
Do they at least know where they all are?
They know where the no man's lands are, but they don't go and they don't go look. But occasionally, you will hear a story from France about a French farmer who unearths an unexploded shell in his farm. Didn't know it was there. And hopefully doesn't set it off. Yeah, but it happens.
Easy to set off?
Maybe they could.
I don't know how easy it would be. I think they're very volatile, and I have heard stories of them going up. Strange story, but true. In the United States, there was a guy back east, I think in Pennsylvania. His business was combing and scouring battlefields that were not protected by state and local laws with a metal detector, and he would find leftover wrecks. Once in a while, he would find an unexploded shell. He brought one home, had it in his garage, and it went off and vaporized him. They found pieces of him in his garage. Yeah.
You think that, like, in the age that we live, you'd use some sort of radio-controlled vehicle to go clean those no man's lands a little bit?
It may be a thing someday, because I know they are trying to clear mines. Ooh, one country over the weekend held a celebration in Africa. They declared it mine-free. I'm trying to remember the name of the country, but Cindy McCain, John McCain, Senator McCain's wife, she's been a long-time advocate of mine removal, and she was there on hand, and she blew up. She got the pleasure of blowing up the last mine in this African country. I have to look up the name of it.
It's not Ebola, is it?
What's that?
Ebola?
It,
I heard it too, was it?
was it Angola? It might have been Angola or Mozambique. Because a lot of countries in Africa have had civil wars since World War II, and they've used mines, Africa and Asia, and they're still trying to clear them out. So it's possible. Good news. And of course, these photos of men in the trenches. So what's it called? What's it called when you do an attack over through the trenches? Over the top. Yeah. So
Mozambique.
was it Mozambique?
Portuguese.
Portuguese. Yeah. So this is for the viewing pleasure of our video people. You guys got to see this last week. This is a film, Kirk Douglas, 1960s. It's called The Paths of Glory. It's actually an anti-war film made by Stanley Kubrick. And this is going over the top. And this is sort of the first Hollywood film that did a really good job of showing what combat was like going over the top. So artillery shells exploding around them. They're going through no man's land. This is a scene that happened over and over and over again, en masse, attacking the lines. They're being shot at by machine guns at the moment. They're getting through different barbed wire that's been destroyed. The officer is blowing his whistle, sort of encouraging them on. Let's see if I... What's that? Sounds of So, Stanley Kubrick made the film to point out the futility of war, which, you know, is sort of coming to this point in the 20th century. If we think about war, and we think about the idea that, I think which one it is, HDMI. If we think about how warfare has changed so much, I call it the industrialization of war. That the second industrial revolution has allowed the United States to become a world power to compete with other industrialized nations like Germany, like France, like England. Has also allowed them to create war machines that go beyond human endurance. Right? So living in these kinds of situations is not the motto of centuries past. These photographs show piles of German bodies in their trenches, possibly killed by a gas attack. Yeah.
Typically, how far, how long is no man's
The distance across?
across from trench to trench?
Hundreds of yards.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, a lot less than, because you got to be able to. You're seeing and shooting at each other, and you know, your typical rifle of the time period can easily hit a target at 500 yards. But you know.
So, were there any snipers?
Yeah.
Do they have snipers? Yes. Snipers will sort of camouflage themselves in a position where they can see enemy trenches with a scope, and they do have scopes at this time. And if there's a place in the trench where they know that like the enemy will pop its head up once in a while, they'll take a shot at it. Yeah, and these helmets, they're steel, but they won't stop a .30 caliber round from going right through them. I have a helmet, I can pass it around.
Were they allowed to make aerial attacks?
Allowed to do what?
To make aerial attacks?
Yes. I'm going to come to the airplane in just a moment here and talk about that. Here's a World War I helmet. It's steel, but it's designed to sort of protect you from sort of flying objects, but not a direct hit, right?
Shrapnel.
Shrapnel, yeah. So I'll pass this around. The inside is it's original equipment, so don't pull on it. It's got a liner that's sort of fragile from use over the years. So I'll try to yank it out. You can put it on if you want. The mud. The mud. This also drove people crazy. Just the weather and the conditions of living in a hole in the ground for weeks and months on end. That's why they had to rotate men in and out, because they're trying to keep their sanity. You gotta get cleaned up once in a while. But even then, you had terrible conditions with the moisture, and it led to things like trench foot. Trench foot is when the skin on inside your boots begins to rot. It's like athlete's foot run amok. There are stories of soldiers knowing where the snipers were and actually going to the length to get themselves out of the war by putting their hands up to get their hand shot.
Oh.
Shot off, which is pretty bad. Horses are still used in World War I because there's not enough trucks to get everything around. So it's an age of it's a transition age from the age of horse to the age of trucks. And so they're still using the horses, but obviously not using them for cavalry attacks anymore. That has become futile. Yeah, the movie and the story War Horse is based on a true story of using horses in combat. But they went from cavalry to just hauling stuff, or some would haul it anyway. I also mentioned the fact that you can trace the battle lines. That's 400 miles by the cemeteries. Okay. So this is the industrialization of war, where we have man against machine, and this art is an excellent representation of this. So we're going to talk about more of the machines today. This is a tank. We'll come back to that. Of course, here's the machine gun. These are pictures we showed last week. Why is this so big? The barrel's only 30 calibers like my finger. Why is
Full
the
water to avoid the barrels.
Yes, because they're firing so many rounds. This is a water tank that encapsulates the barrel it's like a radiator on a car. It keeps the barrel from overheating and jamming. Because if it overheats too much, the metal will change form and the gun will jam. Yeah. What are these guys wearing here?
Gas masks.
So another weapon of war was poison gas. Poison gas was actually invented first by the Germans. The Germans, interesting side note here. A famous German scientist refused to work on the project because he thought it was unethical to use poison gas against an enemy. Einstein, yeah, Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a young German scientist and refused. Others thought, well, we're being patriotic, this is nationalism, we need to protect our country, protect the fatherland. So they came up with poison gas. So the poison gas would be launched from an artillery shell, land in the trenches, explode, and spread the poison gas through the trenches. It was a heavy gas, so it settled in the lowest points. If you jump out of the trench to get away from the gas, what happened to you? You get shot. So to counteract poison gas, you come up with a gas mask. So you can stay in the trench despite the fact that you're living in a trench full of poison gas. Yeah?
Are there any incendiary rounds or something like that?
Incendiary rounds.
Yes.
Artillery. Toward the end of World War I, they did invent the flamethrower, but I don't know about incendiary rounds. One of the problems is incendiaries is you need something to burn, and mud doesn't burn very well.
No.
Incendiaries work really well on cities. And that's mostly where they get used in World War II. They'll burn cities to the ground with incendiaries. Yeah. These men have been blinded by the poison gas. They didn't get their masks on in time. So, can you imagine how terrifying it would be? Now, even if you have a gas mask, this man has places where the gas got through his uniform and has caused these huge blisters to boil up on his skin. My own great-grandfather, Kofranik, who was a Czech from Chicago, Czech immigrant from Chicago, joined the French army before the United States joined the war because he wanted to fight for a free Czechoslovakia, which they eventually did get out of World War I, but he was also a victim of poison gas. Made it back to the United States, but just had lingering lung problems from the gas attack, and eventually died an early death, probably in his late 20s, early 30s. Okay, here are the tanks. So if the Germans invented poison gas, everybody else invented poison gas too, and they just exchanged it. The British invented the tank. And this is the early development of the tank. Why are they so long?
Go
So
over
they
trenches.
roll over the trenches.
To go over the trenches, to bridge the gap. So as the tank would fall, because of the weight of the front falling forward, it would fall onto these long front treads, and then bridge over and drive over the trench. But going back to that photograph that I showed you, with the multiple layers of trenches, back and back and back, how far does he have to go to become successful?
Very far.
Very far. In fact, this is one of the reasons that the tanks did not work as well as they'd hoped. Follow-up. When you have a 400-mile long line of trenches, and you focus your tanks, let's say you've got, 20 or 30 tanks come out to the battlefield, it would also be very, very terrifying to be a German soldier in a German trench, watching these machines come at you, and every time you rake by them with the machine gun, they just bounce off. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible, right? Terrifying to see these things coming at you. However, as you fall back, and you fall further back, because you have to retreat now in the face of this attack, you fall into a further trench further back, or another trench further back. Let's say these tanks actually make it through 3 or 4 lines of trenches.